In today's biased news, Israel bombs a refugee camp, then targets the rescue effort. Countries begin to cut ties with the apartheid regime. And Ukraine is feeling a little left out. In a handful of updates on the Israeli genocide of Gaza, the death toll in Gaza has risen to over 8,700 people, including at least 3,648 children. Additionally, more than 22,000 people have been wounded, with reports of over 2,000 people missing, including children buried under the rubble. Israel continues to lose friends. In the latest updates, Jordan, Colombia, and Chile have recalled their ambassadors, and Bolivia has cut ties with Israel entirely in response to the ongoing genocide. The Israeli military has escalated its ground offensive in the Gaza Strip. The resistance has so far been able to repel most incursions, inflicting losses on Israeli troops and materiel. The World Health Organization has stressed that thousands of injured civilians and people with chronic illnesses urgently require medical treatment in Gaza, which faces a shortage of essential medical supplies and equipment. The Turkish Friendship Hospital, which primarily serves cancer patients, has been rendered completely out of service due to a lack of fuel. The United Nations reports an increase in Israeli settler violence targeting Palestinians in the occupied West Bank. At least 98 households comprising 828 people, including 313 children, in 15 herding communities across the West Bank have been displaced due to settler violence and movement restrictions. Turkey and Iran have jointly called for a regional conference to prevent the expansion of the conflict in the Middle East. They express concern over the humanitarian tragedy in Gaza and the violation of international law. The director of the New York office of the UN High Commissioner for Human Rights, Craig Mokhiber, who has served the UN for 30 years and reported on multiple past genocides, has resigned in protest against Israel's actions in Gaza, characterizing it as a, quote, textbook case of genocide. After a 36-hour communications blackout in Gaza, there are indications that internet connections and mobile networks are gradually being restored. The blackout had raised concerns about potential cover-ups of war crimes and hindered humanitarian operations. Of course, with the Western powers fully in support of the genocide, there's no need for secrecy. A barrage of Israeli airstrikes on the Jabalia refugee camp near Gaza City has resulted in widespread condemnation. The attack demolished several apartment buildings, causing significant casualties. More than 50 people were killed, and over 150 more wounded, according to the Gaza Ministry of Health. The international community, including the European Union, Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates, Egypt, and Yemen, strongly criticized the Israeli airstrikes, calling for an immediate ceasefire. Iran's supreme leader suggested Muslim states halt oil and food exports to Israel to stop the bombardment. Some countries, like Bolivia, cut diplomatic ties with Israel, while others, including Colombia and Chile, recalled their ambassadors. Humanitarian organizations such as Doctors Without Borders and Medical Aid for Palestinians expressed horror at the attack, emphasizing the urgent need for international intervention. In response to the outcry, Israel bombed the same area again this morning, this time targeting the rescue effort. On the Ukraine front, Ukrainian President Zelensky continues to suggest that progress in reclaiming territory from Russian forces should not be expected too quickly. He noted that Moscow's forces were gearing up for new attacks along the 1,000-kilometer front line. The United Nations found evidence suggesting a Russian missile strike in Ukraine, which killed 59 people. In Donetsk, a Russian-installed court sentenced 3 Ukrainian soldiers to life imprisonment for various crimes. Additionally, a 46-year-old Russian man was arrested by the FSB in connection with the shooting of a Moscow-backed separatist leader in Crimea. Reports suggest that Ukrainian leadership feels abandoned by the West, as the propaganda machine and military aid has switched to Israel and left Ukraine to fend for themselves. In today's lightning round, German President Steinmeier visited Tanzania and sought forgiveness for the crimes committed during Germany's colonial rule in the country, particularly in the southern city of Songea, which was part of German East Africa. The European Data Protection Board has extended a ban on behavioral advertising imposed by non-EU member Norway on Facebook and Instagram to include all 30 countries in the European Union and the European Economic Area. This decision, which targets the practice of harvesting user data for advertising, is a setback for Meta, the owner of the social media services, as it faces the risk of fines up to 4% of its global turnover. Pakistan has begun rounding up undocumented foreigners, mainly Afghans, a day before the expulsion deadline. Over 140,000 people voluntarily left the country, many of them Afghans who had lived there for years. Authorities have begun detaining and transferring undocumented foreigners to transit centers. Bigoted Pakistani regulation accuses Afghan nationals of involvement in security issues and criminal activity. The Taliban has requested more time for repatriation and assured peaceful return for those leaving due to political concerns. And in positive news for the day, researchers from McGill University in Montreal, Canada have found that music, especially personal favorites, can alleviate pain, with emotional and physical responses playing a significant role. Their study demonstrated that participants' favorite tracks could be as effective as over-the-counter pain relievers like ibuprofen, and were more potent than relaxing music selected for them. Interestingly, the pain relief effect was sometimes enhanced when the music gave listeners goosebumps or tingling sensations, which researchers believe may block pain signals. This suggests that moving and bittersweet favorite songs can be particularly effective. The study suggests that music can be a non-pharmacological intervention for those dealing with surgery, surgical recovery, or chronic pain conditions. That's all for today. We'll be back day after tomorrow with more news. If you'd like to see longer episodes with more in-depth analysis, consider becoming a patron so we can grow and expand.